I have to pick up the wounds of the past, and also I have to educate the person that wounded me, and also I have to have compassion for this person, and also I have to be forgiving and not resentful, and it's a lot. So please believe me when I say that I understand, because here you are doing everything that you possibly can. You've probably spent thousands of dollars in therapy, if not therapy, then on workshops or the psychics or the shamans or whoever to help you align these wounds that you didn't ask for. And then on top of that, you have a parent who is willfully ignorant, not wanting to see and not wanting to admit to the wounds that they caused you. And on top of that, you have to be the compassionate, considerate, forgiving, non-resentful person. Hello, I'm back today with another video, another topic. If this is your first time clicking on this channel, I talk about mental health topics, personal development, shadow work. I do approach things from a spiritual lens, but I don't want that to discourage you, because for most of my healing journey, I would have considered myself atheist. And so a lot of the topics, I'll talk about different lenses on how to view it. And the important thing is really that you're seeing progress and you're feeling better, and the semantics really matters little. So today I'm going to talk about the mother wound. Really a parental wound. So this could also be something that could apply towards a father as well. I had an absent father, and I may make a video about the wounds of having an absent parent. Mother wound is so general because of course we didn't all have the same parenting style, but there's certain trends that I think that we can all identify with as you go about your healing journey that I want to touch on, in the different emotions and concepts that I've come across as I've been working on healing this, and taking a lot of time to contemplate this one and be honest and truthful about how I feel. The nature of my videos as well, if this is your first time, is that I will bring up a topic and then I kind of talk about my personal life and how it fit into my life, in hopes that that would help you piece together your own shadow work and healing journey and personal development, and help you make your own connections. Because when I was doing this for myself, I felt like I could find a ton of theory, textbook explanations, and psychological explanations, but I still had a hard time applying it to my life. And that's my aim here. And that's why I'm going to be sharing some very vulnerable situations. The experience with my mother is that growing up, she was very, very strict. She was a single parent, very domineering. Also, we did not talk about like emotions, emotional world. There was not a whole lot of support just in general, like practical or emotional. I much felt very emotionally alone, and just there really wasn't a whole lot of guidance really either. So with her being, a single mom of 4 girls, I did take on much of an emotional responsibility that really wasn't mine to take. And to this day, I have no problem like emoting positive emotions, but I struggle with negative emotions and like showing them or telling them or having needs, especially when you don't want to overburden your parent for needs. I felt like there was no room for my needs. And so those are the things that I struggle with as an adult. If you had an issue with like enmeshment with a parent and they were like overly involved in your life, or maybe they were too into your emotional world and you had the opposite problem, this still can apply. A lot of times to work out the maladaptive behaviors that resulted from this parenting style does require that you take a step back and that you create that boundary and that separation, and then later on you can come back together with your parent, once you have really firmly rooted yourself in your own value system and your own belief system. Self-soothing and gentle parenting, because you do have to learn how to do that for yourself. It was important for me to have a healthy separation, and that can come across as, it can be hurtful, to the parent, because they feel like you're abandoning them. They may perceive it as abandonment, but it's something that I've communicated to my mom, that I need space to work on myself. Now, with my mother, she does seem to be very understanding, or whenever I explain that I'm not comfortable attending certain events, or that I need time, that I'm working hard on my therapy. I call it therapy. I do my own shadow work, but that's too difficult to explain. And to be honest, she's never really even asked me what I'm working on, why I do so much work on myself. What is it about my childhood? There's never been desire on her part to understand my inner world, to this day. Why am I saying all of this? So there was a point in time when she asked me about my abusive relationship, which I've referenced in many videos. But I did remember that being kind of an odd thing because we just don't talk about difficult things. We don't talk about like hardships of life. She asked me if he was physically abusive, and I said yes. And she then proceeds to tell me that I didn't get it from her because she taught us to be really strong and not to put up with people. And that was the reason that she asked me, was to like exonerate herself from being blamed for the fact that I lived through that. I started to explain to her that children learn by example and not necessarily what you might say. I kind of started to try to explain how conditioning occurs, but I started to, and then I stopped because I realized that this really wasn't that long ago. This was like 2 years ago. But I realized, like, we're in a day and age where one could inform themselves if they wanted to. And there's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of explanations on narcissistic abuse dynamics and what puts someone at risk for that, and the parenting style that would set up a person to be in that situation. And it's available in her language. She could find it if she wanted to. And it's willful ignorance. And in that moment, I just really didn't have it in me to also then become the educator. I have to pick up the wounds of the past, and also I have to educate the person that wounded me, and also I have to have compassion for this person, and also I have to be forgiving and not resentful, and it's a lot. So please believe me when I say that I understand, because here you are doing everything that you possibly can. You've probably spent thousands of dollars in therapy, if not therapy, then on workshops or the psychics or the shamans or whoever to help you align these wounds that you didn't ask for. And then on top of that, you have a parent who is willfully ignorant, not wanting to see and not wanting to admit to the wounds that they caused you. And on top of that, you have to be the compassionate, considerate, forgiving, non-resentful person. It's a lot. It's a lot on your shoulders. This is why this video is needed. First of all, just before I get into anything else, that you understand that you are seen, that you're not alone, as difficult as it can be. Understanding that the quality of life that you're giving yourself is your reward, and you're going to live an incredibly beautiful life inside, not just outside. It will show out outside. It's just the law of the way of the world works. But inside, your life will be totally beautiful. Just to take a moment to like breathe and see everything that you do and appreciate yourself for all that you do. To continue my story about when I am in situations where I'm around my mom, there is a palpable off, like tension. Tension might be too strong of a word, but there's definitely not just a free-flowing connection. There's some sort of barrier. And for a while I thought, oh, I want to talk to her about it. I want to explain to her what I do in therapy, what I overcome, what I've learned. But she's never asked. I know that she's not interested. And for some people, these open conversations where I think it would clear the air, they don't have the capacity. It would be too shattering, like self-image and egoically shattering for someone to really be able to see and sit with your wounds and your truth. You might think, well, it's for me. I need to get this out. It's not for them. It's for my own inner well-being that I'm going to say what I need to say, and it doesn't matter how they respond. And that is a perfectly valid way to look at it too. And if that is the way that you feel, that's something that you can consider. Me, I feel like I've realized that it's something that I have to do on my own. And I don't have to really even consider or explain anything to her or be understood. And it's like being okay with being misunderstood. But remember that the prize is that you get to have a fulfilling life, and you get to have beautiful relationships, and you know yourself on a deeper level. My goal is to really be at peace just on my own about this. Not in a martyred peace, or not this like blind allegiant piece that we have, when we're kids, we just defend our parents no matter what kind of parents they were. It's important to me that it's a true equanimity when it comes to the subject. If you grew up in severe circumstances and the conditioning of your environment did cause you to have maladaptive behaviors and hardships as an adult, just as a result of the parenting that you received or lack of it, I would recommend separating from the family to really go deep and to feel yourself independent of these relationships and enmeshments and conditioning. If you're not able to like physically move away, if that's just not a possibility for you or really something that you want to do, then I would just recommend making your own space and energetically separating yourself, taking time to go on long drives and journal and do your inner work completely independent of anybody else's influence, because that's how you find your core and your center, and that's how you know the place to return to when you feel that you've strayed. So now I want to talk about where clarity has come in. So I've really gone into the predicament that we're all in and the difficulty of trying to correct these patterns. So as I've been focusing on myself, gentle parenting myself, I reach deeper and deeper levels of love. And I've also talked about this in other videos. The way that I see life, the way that I feel, it just gets exceedingly more beautiful and rich and profound. And life takes on a new meaning. And simple things reach me so deeply. It feels a little bit like a fog lifts, like a clarity comes in. It doesn't always stay, it's like for me, it's a practice that I have to work on pretty much every single day of my life, like in some way, shape, or form, and constantly balancing myself. And basically I went through like a self-love boot camp, and I went real intense with it. That's why I made that video, The Paradox of Seeking. And now I'm like more of a maintaining it. I've managed to release that like intense striving, kind of like almost like self-punishing aspect of seeking wholeness, and it's really more relaxed into it. But the truth is that I really enjoy this process of mindfulness and of cleansing myself, my energy, of like caring about how I feel on a day-to-day basis. And this is going to be something that is going to happen for the rest of my life. And as a result, I get to live a beautiful life. But I do realize that anybody at all, including a parent who is still in self-denial, in blame, or engages in like manipulation, anybody who's like bullying or just an angry person, that they have like a heavy energy around them, their lens of viewing the world, they don't have the same relationship that I do with the world. And to me, that relationship with the world is my relationship with all that is, which is my relationship with Creator. And so I get to have this delicate, beautiful, soft, but also powerful, personal, and deep relationship with the all that is. And I recognize that anybody who is still engaging in those lower thought forms, they don't get to have that same relationship. They have their own version and their own relationship with everybody. That it's not, you don't choose it. Whether you choose it or not, whether you're aware of it or not, you have a frame of reference for how you interact with the world at large. And I much prefer the way that I see the world and that I get to engage with the world. And I have compassion because I realize that their world doesn't get to be the way that mine is. And not that I have the perfect thing figured out, that everybody should aspire to be just like me, but I do feel beauty. I feel my heart is full and beautiful. And I can recognize that somebody who is not in those states does not get to experience that. I think about how I've reached this level that I don't know that my mom will ever reach in this lifetime. She may never feel this level of well-being. And then I'm able to have compassion because I can see that she is still stuck in an illusion. And I know myself, when I was stuck in the illusion, when I had no end in sight, it's a terrible place to be. It's full of terror, literally terror and darkness and hopelessness. It's not pretty. And I really don't want that for any soul. That's why I have this channel, because I don't want people to be there. And especially not my mom. But what I've learned is that the more that I've focused on self-love and working through self-worth wounds and things like this, that naturally extends out to other people. And then I practice compassion for myself, and without even trying, I'm compassionate towards other people. The other thing that I realize is that we are all one. I know that sounds crazy. I know it doesn't make any sense, but what I understand about the nature of reality is that we are all one force. And so your relationship with anything at all is giving you a clue about your relationship with yourself. I understand that any separation that I feel towards my mom is still something unintegrated within me. And I logically get it, but I'm still struggling with how to truly shift my perspective, make a true perspective shift, and call that in. And the answer is probably not to focus at all about my relationship with my mom and just continue to foster and nurture my own inner union, because naturally that will, you love yourself and all that is so much that without effort will extend to everyone around you, and love your life so much and be grateful for how amazing it is that it just will naturally radiate to everyone, including those really, really deep wounds from the family. Then I can also realize that before doing this healing work, I myself was really numb and totally unconscious, as Eckhart Tolle would say. I couldn't really see people over my own ego. Like, that's just the truth of it. It's not that I was like a completely unempathetic person, but I know that my capacity was a lot smaller, a lot more muted. You know, part of it is just maturing and immaturity, and I can't say all of it's being unconscious, but really allowing myself into my own heart, because I know that my heart was really hardened, that I couldn't see the needs. And it wasn't that it was malicious, I was just ignorant. Sometimes we are numb this way to other people's needs or their pain, also because we feel shame about it, especially with the situation with my mom. You know, there's like, not only would it be shattering to her egoic identity, but it might be just too much grief, that she feels that she wouldn't be able to handle that level of grief, or, you know, self-blame or shame to have that kind of discussion, even if that's not my intention, if it's just to be understood. And that could be a separate component from shame or blame. Sometimes it feels like it's an unsustainable level of grief that we just decide that we're gonna not acknowledge it. And well, a lot of times our parents decide that they're not gonna acknowledge it. Does that make it okay? No, absolutely not. But that is the mechanism of, if you've ever wondered, like, why can't they see the pain that they cause me? Why can't they acknowledge it? Another maybe better example would be actually my sibling. From what she's told me of growing up, she was in a lot of pain as well, emotionally, and I didn't know that. You know, I was in my own world. And so when she told me this, I think that my initial reaction was like, no, that's not what I remember. You and my mom were really close. You guys were like best friends, and you actually had it easiest than all of us because, you know, my mom was way less strict with you than with all of us. That was my initial reaction. It was like, just because I didn't see her hurt doesn't mean that she didn't. And, you know, I think about, well, why did I react that way? I think part of it could be that I felt responsible, that I didn't see it, or that I didn't do anything about it. In a way, that's kind of doing the same thing that my mom is doing now, right? Which is just denying a person's experience because it's not, you didn't see it that way. it is kind of a slippery slope too, because, you know, some dysfunctional family systems were built upon making someone a scapegoat or putting undue blame on someone. And so take this, please, with a grain of salt, because sometimes the whole family system is built upon instilling this feeling of burden that is not called for and is not yours to bear. Remember that somebody else's interpretation of our actions, especially negatively, does not always constitute the truth. And also realizing that somebody else's perspective and experience is not our fault. So please keep that in mind. But at the same time, I can hold two things as true. I didn't purposefully mean to cause you harm, and also I could have done more. And sometimes there's no nice, neat reconciliation. There's not a hero and a villain. You know, sometimes it's just this kind of gray mush, and it's like, okay, that's what is. That's what is. Just being able to sit with all of that complexity and all of the grief and all of the emotions that stirs up in me, being present with them and just saying, okay, here it is. So then you might wonder, well, what else can you do besides acceptance of what is, which is huge. I mean, honestly, that's kind of the goal. But there's actually a few more things that have helped me. And in my last video, I talked quite a bit about Autobiography of a Yogi, and some of my commentary was about how Paramahansa Yogananda had such a different upbringing than I did, and like how strange it was that I would connect to him and feel such a kinship to him to the level that I do, being that we come from like completely separate worlds. Well, I was recently at a retreat. I was actually at an Eckhart Tolle retreat at the Omega Institute. And during a meditative session in the sanctuary, I had a download come in. It turns out that this day was a Kazemi, which is really cool. When I learned that, Kazemi was actually in my house, my fourth house of like home and origins. So that really makes sense. I had this like download come in where I was told that we're actually not that different, because see, he set out to find the Divine Mother after his earthly mother passed, and he loved his mom, and he was like this like impeccable figure to him. Like he was so in love with his mom, and so that is what triggered him, this impeccable mom. This is what triggered him to start going deep into spirituality. In my case, it was the same thing. It was the absence of this impeccable mom that led me to search for spirituality. So in essence, we're really not that different. That's what the download told me. And that made me think about how important mother and the father and how deep those wounds go for us, where we could spend easily our entire lives trying to find that wholeness that we didn't get as a child. And, you know, we search for approval in other people, and we search for that love and that acceptance everywhere, everywhere we can, you know, as adults. I do this practice quite often, not every day, but there was a time I was doing it every day, where I send an imaginary grounding cord from my belly button down to Mother Earth. And then I send an imaginary cord from the top of my head all the way up to Father Sky. When I reach Mother Earth and Father Sky, they send their nurturing love back into me. And the mother's energy and the father's energy meet at my heart. From that heart, I do a little spark and I create a little bubble around me. So this was a practice that I was used to doing, and it was, you know, whatever. It just was like a normal thing that I did. One day I was doing this practice. I sent the cord down to the mother. I sent the cord up to the Divine Father. They met in my heart. And I had a moment where I felt like in real life, incarnate in the flesh, I felt like I had a very wise, supportive, loving mother and a very wise, supporting, loving father. And it felt so real. Just like if I were to tell you right now, think of a relative that you really love, you feel how real that connection feels. That's how it felt, as if it was truly happening. Like I really had this. And then I just felt so like, oh, this is what it was supposed to feel like. This is what it feels like. I felt like, what else could I want? Like I have a loving mom and dad. What else could I want? And then I realized that children who had this, they get to go out in the world, and whatever they do, they create, it comes from a place of like fundamentally, they're good. They're like whole. And so they're just going out to experience. And it doesn't mean that they can't face hardships later, that things can't happen. That's not what I'm saying. But fundamentally, there's a base there that a lot of us don't have. And so when we go out into the world, there's seeking and striving and trying to fill this void. And anything that you set out to do is, until you learn to do that for yourself, that's what you're seeking. And just how that can really take over your whole life. So I did want to make sure that I include an exercise for you, because these are triggering topics, and I don't want to just stir up a bunch of triggering things and then not leave you with some kind of resource. Create a sacred space, have ambient lighting, light some candles, light some incense, whatever makes this a special moment that you're dedicating. Make it as luxurious and as beautiful as you can, as the tools that you have to your disposal. And then do the practice where you will imagine that you're sending out a grounding cord from your belly button down to Mother Earth. And so you're going to picture this cord going down into the layers of the earth, and it's going to go through, the crust, the crust, and then the what are the layers? The mantle. I don't know, the magma. Jeez Louise, all the way down, and then it'll connect down to the very center of the earth, which is, I see it as like crystals, beautiful crystals. So it connects there. And then you're going to imagine the Divine Mother, Mother Earth, sending you nurturance and love and support, and you send her gratitude right back through that cord. And then now you're going to send a cord up from the crown of your head all the way up to Father Sky, and it's going to go and past Earth's atmosphere, and it's going to keep going past the solar system out into the Milky Way. Now you're seeing more galaxies, and then eventually, in my mind's eye, I see it go so far into the universe that it actually reaches this like realm of pure light. Like we've past the dark matter, and we're in the pure light now. And from that place, Father Sky sends me his love and his nurturance. And then have that meet at your heart. And then really imagine as best as you can that in the flesh you have a supportive mom and a supportive dad. And do this in the morning, because then what you set out to do that day will come from a place of wholeness. It has a better chance of coming from a place of wholeness, especially if you're able to get yourself where like it really feels real, like just as you were thinking about Aunt Beth or whatever. It's super powerful. And then I recommend doing it every single day, if you can, at least for a little while, because it will help orient your day from a place of fullness, which is more enjoyable, and then it's authentic. I'm going to link the name of a practitioner. Her name is Sherry Fox. She does family constellation therapy. She is super intuitive to where, like, even if you have a hard time saying what you want to say, it's like she understands. And so I'm going to link Sherry's information too, to give another resource. She handled some really tough things, and with so much sensitivity, but this beautiful intuition. And it was spot on, because it was things that I hadn't really explained, and she gave it a voice. She's actually the one who first introduced me to this practice of aligning the mother and the father within me. But I do recommend that you check her out, and if it feels, aligned, it would be an incredible resource. I don't think I've mentioned this before, but I'm also a practitioner. I'm an Akashic Records reader. If you've been watching my videos, if you feel like we have mirrored life experiences, or you really resonate with my way of explaining or speaking, or you feel comfortable, then I invite you to check my page, and I'll have the link in the description as well. All right, it looks like I've lost the light, so I'm going to take that as a cue to go ahead and cut the video short. This is the longest one I've had, but even so, I feel like I've just barely scratched the surface of a topic like this. But for right now, it's just the high level discussion on how can you get to a better place within yourself. And I didn't go super specific. There's a lot that we could get into, and perhaps I will have more parts or more series, or get into specific wounds, because I've done all of that. I have done all of it and I've documented, but I hope that this gives you at least a starting place to start to feel a little bit more peace and more hope. And it's a great starting point.